Afternoon, everybody. I'm your host, Crystal, and this is another edition of the 9 O'Clock Meltdown podcast. And over Facebook and also Patreon streaming right now, I have Bodhi Werner. Hello, sir.
Hi, Crystal. Thanks for having me.
Yes, of course. Thank you so much for being a part of this. Once again, I've had you on the show multiple times with your mom back when you were Mother-Son Productions, and then I had her on the show again to talk about her book, Incandescence, and now we are here. It's kind of coming full circle, and we're here to talk about your book, Northport, 1999.
Oh, yeah. So lovely to be here and so lovely to be back. It's always a pleasure talking with you and glad to talk about it. Yeah.
Excellent, excellent. So now, Bodhi, this has been kind of a work in progress. The first time I had you on the show, you had kind of mentioned maybe putting something in the works, kind of along a book a little bit, and then it's kind of progressed. Then on the show with your mom and you, we touched on your book a little bit. You were still kind of in the writing phases, still kind of hashing out the characters. And now it's here. It's ready to rock and roll. You sent me some excerpts. I absolutely devoured them. Really enjoy your writing style. It's kind of reminiscent of Lovecraft, but then a whole lot of 2000s in there as well. And immediately upon reading the first couple pages, I immediately went, oh, this is going to be kind of like X-Files with the agent. But can you tell I'm excited about this? I'm just going to keep rambling.
Glad that it seems to have sunk its claws in you.
It did. Yes.
Yeah. I know we talked about last time having a shared affinity for X-Files, and this book definitely channels some of my love, and the influences come from being a kid growing up watching that, Twin Peaks and stuff. So this definitely is got that influence in there.
Yeah. And also I kind of noticed an influence of, you got a mad scientist. You've got some of these kind of creatures that they've been working on. So a whole lot of that, which, that kind of spans generations and a bunch of different things. Did you kind of grab a little bit from T-Virus and Resident Evil at all? I kind of got a little bit of that vibe, but...
Oh, yeah, you did. That's cool. Yeah, well, I love hearing different people's thoughts and what it brings up for them. I definitely, watched that as a kid and the Mila Jovovich movie and, the video games. And this is another big thing that growing up in the 90s, this story is set in the 90s, hence the title,
Yep.
Northport 1999. Growing up with those video games and that time, there's just so much goodness that I want to take from that, the pop culture, and so I'm trying to siphon a lot of that into this story.
Well, you've done an absolutely splendid job. I'm really excited to read the rest of it. So where are you at publishing-wise?
Yeah, so great question. So what I sent you was the first segment, which is going to be the first of about 10 segments that I'm putting out exclusively on Patreon.
Oh, okay.
And so the Patreon members are going to be the founding members of this project. And the book is done. The first novel is done. But the reason I am distributing it on Patreon exclusively first in about 10 novelettes
Okay.
is to help with the funding of the proofreading, illustration, and developing the book into a pitch for an episodic series to bring to Catalyst. So actually the first segment which you read is going to be going up on Patreon soon, and then regularly after that, one segment after the next until the whole book is out there.
Okay.
People who sign up for the Patreon, they're going to get credit in the book once it becomes published public.
Fabulous. And now, how long did it take you to write this book? I think last we had spoken, which was about your mom's book, Incandescence. You were still kind of working on it a little bit. How long has it actually taken you?
Yeah, so last time we talked, it was the launch of my mother's book, Incandescence, Rising Above Darkness. We launched that in March 25th, so we spoke to you shortly thereafter, and I finished the final draft of this first novel on summer solstice. So I think that's June 10. Not great with dates, but a little while back here. So there's kind of two answers to how long it took to write. I started writing this as a short film idea back in 2017 is when I first came to this idea. Then a lot else has happened since then. I'm actually currently pitching the episodic series based on my mother's book. I'm pitching it to Catalyst right now. So I did that whole project in between then and now. But when the pandemic started back in April of last year, when we really started to isolate, that's when I got back into really wanting to make that short film. And it wasn't the right time to get with actors and camera people and crews. So my mother was like, hey, what's the story behind this creature? You know, you've got this short film scene, but where did the creature come from? And where did the person it's gonna eat come from? And I saw that there was all these layers that I had behind it, and I started discovering the story, and that's where the mad scientists and the genetic experiments and all the characters and layers, and that's where deciding when to set it, you know.
Very cool. So let's jump into the title, Northport 1999. Why, how, and why 1999? Why not 1990 or 1995?
Or 1991 when I was born.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. First, to get to Northport, it is a fictional reimagining of Duluth, Minnesota.
Okay.
You know, this is really a story about taking everything I love most about this place, the surroundings, the beauty, just the rich history, the personality of the community. You know, this place really does bring the best part of Minnesota nice to life. And so it's taking that and pitting it against these, you know, the most powerful predators on the planet. So Northport was my way of fictionalizing Duluth.
Okay.
While still capturing everything I love most about it. And 1999 I just see as such a pivotal moment in history, and it's right on the cusp of some metaphorical and real change. Coming up on the millennium, and there was a lot of anticipation and what's going to happen, and I think that plays perfectly into the story without getting too much into spoilers and stuff.
All right. All right. You know me, I'm a fan of spoilers all the way, so I will try not to pick your brain too hard there. But yes, I can understand the whole 1999 thing. I mean, I remember it. I don't know if you do, but the whole Y2K and the world's gonna end and computers, I can't remember if it was computers were gonna crash or computers were gonna take over. It was this whole big thing.
Yeah.
It was all of the above. Aliens are gonna land. I mean, I could say it and it was happening.
Yeah.
I still remember my dad, who's not a big conspiracy theorist, but stocking our basement full of canned goods and toilet paper because he didn't know what was going to go down. I think he was more in fear of everyone else losing their minds rather than actual apocalypse, so...
Yeah, well, for those who don't remember or know, basically what it was people thought that computers, they weren't sure if they were going to be able to just make the switch from always having, 19 in the year, when the internal clocks and stuff, if they were going to be able to go to 2000. And they thought that this was going to destroy every computer on planet Earth, including the nuclear missile computers, and trigger apocalypse, literally.
Right.
So some people were digging bunkers underground.
Yes.
Or, like taking a container and a school bus and covering it in dirt and planning to live out. So there's definitely some of that in here. And there's some, you met Wild Bob, you read the first section, and he mentions Y2K, and he kind of channels that energy, conspiracy theorist, wild guy. And so, that people who are reading it, you'll see what I'm about.
Yes. And honestly, that's kind of pivotal to now because there's tons of conspiracy theories going on. And I don't know about you, but there's some days I just miss the Y2K era of just getting the news from the news stations. But I digress.
That's what we're here for, digress.
Fabulous. Yes, back to the book. So, Bodhi, I see that you have the logos all printed out. You've got your hat with your name on it. You've got stickers. Yes. Yeah. Yes, stickers, everything else. Do you have a couple drawings back there as well?
I do, and these are some of the note cards we're going to be putting out on the Patreon. Here's Madeline Bishop and Sheriff Blackwood and Gus Trouth, an amazing illustrator I'm working with. Help me with these. He's super awesome.
Yeah.
And then, we got channeling some of that monster energy for the listeners. We got a big open mouth with sharp teeth.
He almost looks like Voldemort from Harry Potter.
Yeah, he's definitely got that with the pits for nostrils and kind of the skull-like features.
The no-nose look. Yes. And now, Bodhi, you've actually done a couple live streams that I've hopped in on, kind of showcasing your monsters there and your drawings and things like that. Were those live streams just to gain more followers and gain more Patreons, or just kind of explain what's going on in your world?
Yeah, well, a little bit of all of that. I launched the book project on the 25th, my birthday.
Okay.
And I launched it on Patreon to just share this thing that I've wanted to share the whole time I've been writing it. It was just lovely to finally get to put it all out there. And I just couldn't not share these creatures, and especially the stuff that Gus is doing. He's so talented with his illustrations, and I'm just extremely lucky to have him on the team. And the thing about this book, it's always been meant to be more than just literature.
Okay.
I never really envisioned myself as writing a book, but this was originally a short film idea. And like I said, then I started figuring out everything behind it. Concept arose, and then all the characters. And then this last year has just been the perfect time for introspection and to commit to writing a novel. So I took the time, and I felt grateful every minute that I could, that I was lucky enough to be in a space to do that. And while I've been writing it, it's always been about having some sketches and some visual material to also share.
Yeah, fabulous. It sounds like you've got a absolutely wonderful, talented artist by your side. How did you guys find each other? Did your paths cross on the internet or in real life?
Yeah, well, we go way back. Gus Trouth is my cousin, and we reconnected over this project. And he's just been extremely generous with his time. He's doing commercials for Adult Swim and other stuff. He's got an animation company with some of his buddies, longtime friends from college, and they're just amazing artists. And so to just strike up a conversation with him, and then all of a sudden be getting his drawings of my characters, is just mind blowing. And he just sent me a sketch of John Smiley, the special agent from the FBI, and just every time I see a new one of my characters from my mind visualized, it's like, wow, that's amazing. I want to thank Gus again for being super awesome. And this makes me think that I should do this for the first time.
Okay.
Thank the Patreon people.
Yes. Yeah. And actually, while you're pulling that up, let's dive into Patreon a little bit. So a ton of people have jumped on the Patreon bandwagon. Whether you're on YouTube or SoundCloud or whatever platform it is. Now, Patreon is a way for fans or family, friends, whoever it is, to give directly to the artist. A lot of people have heard of Amanda Palmer. She was kind of the one to kind of head spear Patreon for the artist side of things, versus then doing a Kickstarter, which is kind of like a one-term project, and you either make it or you don't. But Patreon, it's always there. People can give or monthly or what have you, and it's always kind of culminating and always moving forward. So now, what was your reasoning for Patreon? Was it just kind of gaining people and having that connection with people versus trying to do like a Kickstarter or a GoFundMe?
Yeah, so Patreon is really lovely because it's a subscription crowdfunding service which connects the artist and the community that they're trying to interact with. And for me, I felt like it was a really good platform to help me do exactly that, connect with people who are passionate about this story and about supporting it. For me, they really are the founding members. They're going to get their name in the back of the book when it's published. They're going to get a free book, but they're also here in this development phase where it's only them who get to read it, and they get these gifts. Every month we're doing different note cards and stickers and stuff, but it really helps engender the community, the connection directly to them. And one thing I want to say about what's cool about Patreon is people who like to check out this project on social media, they're already to an extent paying to do that because we pay with our attention. And we get the ads and Facebook tracking you and seeing what you like and then selling that information to Amazon and every other person so they can tailor their ads to you. So Patreon is just a more transparent way of doing that, you know? And if you want to see the project and connect with it without the clutter of all the ads you get from Facebook and Instagram and all that, it is important to help people understand how it benefits both sides of the equation. That's why I gravitated toward that direction. And because it's going to be an ongoing thing, there's a lot that we're doing with it, tailored more towards a monthly model. So I'll be really quick. So thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Victoria. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Rhett. Thank you, Sue. Thank you, Pam. Thank you, Riley. Thank you, Jay. Thank you, Lucas. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Ed. Thank you, Cremena, Jeff, Joseph, and Claire. You guys are the best. I love you so much.
And thank you, Bodhi, for being on the show.
Yeah, and Crystal, of course. I have been so excited about just nerding out with you on this for the longest time.
Yes, fabulous. And I'm excited to nerd out with you as well. And now you had kind of mentioned that you're attempting to kind of culminate this book and pitch it to Catalyst. So for those who aren't aware what Catalyst is, it was a video festival kind of thing out in Virginia, and it's now kind of migrated and made its way to Duluth, Minnesota, of all things. Yeah. And now, I know you and your mom went last year. I personally did not partake. It was a little costly on that side of things. But it sounds like Catalyst people can come in and do Q&As with people from the industry, kind of really get a feel for what goes on behind the scenes. But how was your time with Catalyst? I mean, how did that go down? How was it meeting executives and writers?
So just to go over what you said, and
it was a mouthful. I apologize.
No, it's perfect. So for the people who don't know, because I love, just like you, I'm passionate about spreading the word about local art happenings and opportunities. And so Catalyst is like a film festival, but for TV, specifically trying to help independent creators like you and I who want to find a way into the industry, whatever level we're at. If we just have an idea, or say we've shot an entire series and we're trying to distribute it. It's a whole spectrum. Catalyst is trying to help you connect to the industry. And it is a burgeoning industry that, Netflix alone spent some absolutely insane amount of money annually on TV and film. I don't remember the number, but it's in the billions. And that's Netflix alone. And, Duluth has the ability to capture a portion of that, which would, it would be like 20 of the new Essentia hospitals annually. That's how much money could come in. Okay. So rambling a little bit, but basically Catalyst, they had been around for 14 years. They started in LA and then they moved to Vermont, and they were just doing a festival annually, connecting creators to the industry. Then they moved to Duluth in 2018, and they had their first festival here in 2019, which my mother and I went to. That's the last time they had an in-person festival. And it was just an amazing experience. They had big parties at Glen Sheen, at the Depot, at the Graceland Ballroom. They had showings every single day at all the theaters around. And so it was a really good opportunity for people to just meet. People from around the world came. So without naming names, I was at Catalyst one of the last nights at Glen Sheen. And I was taking a carriage ride around Glen Sheen. The end of this party, just magical. And then I'm talking to this woman I'd never met, to a couple people, 4 people in this carriage. After I'm telling her all about this project that I'm working on, the adaptation of my mother's book, she tells me who she is, and she turns out to be one of the writers from one of my favorite shows on Netflix. And fast forward a month from there, I'm Zooming with her and working on my script. He's giving me her notes and feedback, and that's the same script I'm now pitching to Catalyst. So that's what Catalyst really is opportunity for independent people to connect with people they would never cross paths with normally, and go to seminars and stuff. And there is a variety of ways to get in. There are day passes, which are much more reasonable. And then there's applying to the Institute, which is also pretty reasonable because you get a festival ticket and a submission. Anyway, so now they're doing the festival again this year, and I'm going to be bringing not only my mother's project, but I'm going to have Northport, now it's a book, and it's going to be with the help of my founding members on Patreon. I'm going to be turning it into a pitch.
Excellent. How long do you think it'll be from when you give the pitch until it's kind of finalized? I mean, are you looking at this kind of long term?
Yeah, so that's the beautiful thing about what's happening with Catalyst, and a really good question. They are really, now they are called Catalyst Story Road Institute, because they are more than just a festival. They're also a year-round teaching institution, which is actually global now. This last year, partnering with my friends Cremena, she's the vice president of the Duluth Sister Cities, they've really started working on connecting globally. And like Philip was just talking with New Zealand, and South Korea is involved. And Philip is the executive director, by the way, of Catalyst. So they're bringing all these people from around the world, and they're teaching them how to connect with the industry. And one of the things they teach is that this is a long-term relationship type thing. So say from the moment I pitch it, somebody wants to help me turn it into a TV show. All go well. That would be years. It would take years for it to actually happen. That's the nature of TV. It is it's a long game.
Yes, it is a long game. And then if you get into, seasons and then a second season and things like that, then it's an extreme long-term goal. So very cool, Bodhi, that you're looking at this as a long-term project for yourself. Really, really cool. I love that you're on Patreon and that you're really trying to rope in the Northland and the artists that we already have up here versus not, do I want to use the term sellout? Maybe. Selling it out to New York or LA. Right. They get enough projects. Keep it here.
Exactly. And that's so good that you mentioned that, because part of the two projects I'm working on, my mother's life stories adapted into a pitch, and this book, they're both Duluth projects, and we're committed to bringing production money here.
Yes.
And even in just the short term with, illustrators and concept artists, pre-production, then to smaller things like short films and voice acting and podcasts, we're committed to doing everything and helping in every way we can to bring that bigger production here. That, one big TV show happening in the Northland is an industry in its own.
Right.
That, like I said, it can last for as many years as there are seasons of the show.
Right. And I think Duluth and the surrounding Northland needs to look at something other than the railroad industry. Don't get me wrong, that's kind of what fuels the fire around here, metaphorically and physically as well, but it's time we looked elsewhere.
Yeah, well, and there's, like Philip, the executive director of Catalyst, says, there's nothing you ever learned that you didn't learn from a story. And what do we all do every evening? Unless you're reading a book on your e-reader or a real book, you're probably watching Netflix at some point, or Hulu or Amazon, or or TV. And so there's a huge appetite for it, and Duluth is really poised to capture some of that industry. That could be a serious game changer, and all of it's moving in that direction. We have a county-wide tax incentive now, or a cash incentive. The county passed 25% cashbacks incentive. So if productions come here and they spend $4 million in the local economy, they get $1 million back. So that builds local economy. Once the county did that, then the state got on board and they did their own. So now people who decide to come here today to shoot a short film or a feature film or a TV pilot, they can get 50% cash back. And that's only two of the incentives that exist in Minnesota. And just like you were saying, there's a lot of creativity here. It's just a puzzle that hasn't quite been put together yet. It is coming together, and all the pieces are there. That's part of the reason I could be so inspired about doing something like Northport 1999, is because while I'm writing it every day, I can see the progress that's happening around me, and I can see that this is becoming a place where I can turn this into the different forms of entertainment that I aspire to do.
Right. Oh, fabulous, Bodhi. Fabulous. That just gives me so much hope for the Northland and everything else to kind of really culminate our art scene. Because when I kind of stumbled on the scene back in 2008, I was a freshman in college, and if you asked me back then if Duluth had anything going on, I would have been like, no, it's just a college town. Bleh. Then I basically stumbled into this kind of underground music and art scene, and just so many people that are now my friends that really kind of culminated and pushed it forward. And now it's kind of out in the open. Homegrown is absolutely huge. Now it's not just, us people that like live music. It's everybody, and people come up from the cities for it. They're getting national advertising. So that in itself has kind of grown. You're helping grow the film scene up here, which is absolutely amazing. I've definitely seen that kind of take on a life of its own as well. There have just been so many different pitches and things like that I've seen come across my computer screen, not just from you, but from others as well. And it's just absolutely amazing to watch something start from something kind of underground and very small into something a little bit bigger each year. And it just makes me so happy to be a part of it and to know people that are also a part of it as well. So thank you so much. So much.
While we're thanking people,
yes.
Thank you for, just sharing the word about all these artists and connecting with all of them and being such a friendly presence in this community and helping, give voice to all the creatives. Without people like you who are passionate about connecting us to each other and sharing our stories, we'd just be lone little dots in the darkness, but you're helping us connect. I cannot overstate how important that is to have creative, awesome advocates like yourself.
Well, thank you. All right, now that that's out of the way, let's jump back into it. So let's talk...
The mutual admiration.
Yes, the mutual admiration. Yes, thank you.
Mutual admiration, meeting adjourned. Back to business.
Yeah, exactly. Back to business. Let's talk about your logo a little bit.
Sure.
I think it's super fun. It's kind of a very simple aspect. Yes, for those of you that can't see, because we're on a podcast, it's a circle with a line through it. I mean, how simple is that? How did that come about? I mean...
Yeah. So that is a slashed zero. It's a little bit of a variation on a slashed zero. Some people might know of it as a pure, or a lot of people see them in Scandinavian culture. It's like a variation of an O, but it's also a variation of a zero. Where it came from for me is a slashed zero, which is on older computers and typewriters where they couldn't really differentiate from a zero and an O, an uppercase O.
Okay.
They would have a slash or sometimes a dot in the zero. And it's very reminiscent, World War II era teletype and typewriters and Cold War era computers and a lot of the stuff that you're going to be learning about as you dive deeper into the book. The number zero comes into play very big for the book as well. And I just found something extremely eerie about the symbol. It's in its simplicity. Also, when you mixed it in and you put it in the place of an O, like Northport, we're playing around with the design of having the slashed zero instead of the O's. It just has a menacing look to it. And for all the connections with the zero and the slash zero in the story, it's perfect.
Fabulous. And Bodhi, I do apologize for the kind of scuffling around. My husband just walked through the door, so...
Well, welcome to our podcast.
Yes, welcome to our podcast.
Good. Yeah, no worries.
Yes, the joys of being live, right?
You get to have a real life,
Exactly. Everybody has a real life. Speaking of real life, you had mentioned earlier that kind of when things really started to be shut down due to the pandemic, you had really mentioned kind of hunkering down and really focusing in on your book. Was that just a need to still be creative and not being able to go out and being creative, or Did you look at it as an opportunity rather than something kind of detrimental? I know so many of us were just craving to get out and still be creative and trying to find different ways at being creative. So how was that time for you?
Yeah, so the process of writing this book, part of the reason a major reason it's set in Duluth is because my mother and I, we walk around Duluth, around our neighborhood mostly every day. Recently, it's up in the Lester Amity trail area. And every time we go out, it's just so, wherever we go, my mind sees a story. You know, it could be an abandoned building. It could be Old Main up the street from us with its broken facade of a building. It's kind of like the bones of a building, or standing there on this grass hill next to a laboratory. So you can see where these inspirations started to flow. And these are locations that are in the book. So as I'm walking around finding inspiration, and that's why this book has a lot of real Duluth places in it. And to get back to what you were saying, like when we started this introspective period, yes, I wanted to make a film, but I knew I had to stay inside and figure out how to move forward despite the obstacle. Mm-hmm. And the book was the perfect way to do it. But my mother and I would get out every day, and she'd be so gracious as to listen to me talk about this and give me her feedback or ask me questions. And so every day I would plot out the next thing I want to write. I'd talk about how it should go, and then she'd ask me questions which would elucidate, a gap I left in it, and I'd get it figured out on that walk. And I'd be totally inspired by the surroundings, and then I'd come back and I'd get into writing and, forget about all the woes, forget about life.
Yeah, fabulous. That sounds absolutely amazing. Me, on the other hand, nothing really changed for me. I got up and I went to work, and then I came home again. So, but yes, very much so the introspective.
God bless you for keeping going and keeping the world turning,
Yeah, yes, of course. Now, Bodhi, you had kind of mentioned that in this book it's got, the kind of X-Files-y theme to it, the Y2K theme, and you had mentioned the symbol is actually a World War II typewriter symbol. Are there any kind of World War II-esque feelings in this book? I mean, I know during World War II it was, the arms race to create, whether it was the perfect soldier or the perfect home or biological warfare. It was really an odd time to be alive, and I'm just stating that from just all these documentaries that I've devoured throughout the years that I've been here. But is there any of that kind of in the book? I mean, you're talking about mad scientists and almost like creatures from the Black Lagoon.
Yeah. Well, now this is where I try to think about what's too spoilery, and then I try to think about how to thread that needle. So there are definitely retro vibes. The story's set in 1999, but there are elements of the story that date back to Cold War era, and then even before to World War II era. We've got dark stuff that harkens back to kind of the Nazis trying to figure out any advancement, like you said, super soldiers and that sort of stuff. So there's definitely themes that run parallel to that with some of the darker, more mysterious characters who I haven't really revealed yet.
Okay.
But yeah, it's, so I like to say it's a sci-fi horror crossed with a spy thriller set in a fictional reimagining of Duluth. And this sci-fi it's bounded by speculative fiction. So there's no portals or time machines or magic or mysticism. There is genetics and genetic experiments gone wrong, and so gene splicing, and the spies come in because of world powers trying to control the scientific discoveries or trying to stop them altogether. And the scientific discoveries are very, dark and grim, and that's why they're, kind of evil mad scientists.
Yeah. Any chimeras or anything like that in the book?
I that sort of stuff, like, viruses and stuff, never really entered the inspiration well.
Okay.
And this was the germ of this story came up even before this whole period we're all living through. So it's not that we lived through this that I decided not to go in that direction. But I think probably living through this, I decided to, I don't necessarily keep it light. This is not always an easy story to read, but I think it's gripping. But I avoided things that are a little bit too close to home for our, current generation.
Right.
But definitely creatures and some very interesting methods that these creatures employ to lure in their prey.
Oh, interesting. All right. Yeah. And that kind of sounds like it's going to come later, so now I have to wait, right?
Depends on how far you got in your first segment.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I'll just have to keep reading then.
Yes.
Bodhi Werner is the author, creator, and inspiration mastermind, crazy mad scientist. Behind Northport 1999. It's a episodic book that you're working on publishing. Right now you're publishing it through Patreon. You're going to publish it into an entire book. And now you're working on the pitch for Catalyst to come out. And now, let's say Catalyst jumps on the project. Are you really going to try to keep it close to home? Keep it in Duluth rather than, somebody taking it up into Canada or down into LA?
Yeah, well, the really beautiful thing about doing this project right now is ball is rolling here in Duluth specifically to having everything set up that would need to be set up to do a production like this. And yeah, my commitment is to do it here. If I have been committed to growing the industry here since the day I moved here. Like I moved here from California, from the Bay Area, a drive Hollywood. I moved to Duluth and I thought, oh man, am I going to have to go back to one day, make movies? And the truth is I've met the most passionate people here. I did the Duluth 48-hour film project here. I've done more short films here than I did back in California. Learned more, met more people. So the short answer is yes, and the long answer is I'm not the only one who's passionate. With Catalyst coming here 2 years after I did and making it their new headquarters, their new forever home, getting the Upper Minnesota Film Office to really galvanize and create the incentive. Then the state followed, and now people are working on things like sound stages and crew development. There are already classes almost every month that you can take to become a certified PA, and any productions that come here, they have to hire a certain number of interns. So those people who take those PA classes, they go work on real productions who are taking advantage of those incentives. That's one of the rules of the incentives. And so all the measures are in place to, by the time this could feasibly be something of a Netflix level or Amazon level, or to have the actual infrastructure. In between now and then, I'm doing things like audio podcasts with voice actors. I'm already working with voice actors and illustrators, and then short films. I am an indie filmmaker, so there's no doubt that stuff is going to be made here. And everything that I have control over to do with this project, which is everything right now.
Good.
One day I'm hoping, big money gets involved and I may have to lose some control, but absolutely everything that I have control over is going to be made here in the Northland. That's the setting,
Yeah.
It's meant to have this as the backdrop. And
fabulous. And now you had mentioned that you're working with some voice actors. Anyone that we may know?
Yeah, well, if you haven't interviewed him, you definitely should. So there's Chris Hoffman. He's my buddy up at UMD. He just got accepted to a program. I should know exactly where it is. I think it's in Holland. So he's going to be leaving soon, but he'll be back. And I've told him I'm committed to making him fly back to Duluth as soon as possible for a project. And then Noah Cornwell, I don't know how much I can say about that. I know a project that he has done, which is out there in the world, is a Yu-Gi-Oh app. It's a game. He did some voice work for that. And they've been, just helping me from giving me their thoughts on test reading, and as we're moving towards audio podcast stuff, they're there for that too. And
All right. Yeah. Excellent. Bodhi, I can hardly wait for your next segment to come out. Like I said, I devoured this first one. It's really reminisce of all the things that kind of you and I went through in our childhoods with Y2K and X-Files and aliens and all that stuff. Very cool, very exciting. I can hardly wait for Catalyst to come up and see how you guys kind of fare with them and where you guys are going to take it. Absolutely fabulous. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to talk with me in the wider world about Northport 1999. It's available for now on Patreon, and it will be available to the world soon enough. Thank you so much, Bodhi.
Hey, thank you, Crystal. I really appreciate it.
Of course, and we'll keep the dialogue going. Have a wonderful day. Bodhi Werner, author of Northport 1999. Talk to you later.